members of the council to their first meeting. I won't go into the details of the result of the last election. I'm sure we all know what that was. But in a nutshell, it means business as usual for Hillingdon for the next 4 years. So on to tonight's business. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence.
Chairman, all members are present.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest in matters before this evening? No, thank you. In which case do we approve the minutes of the last Cabinet meeting, pages 1 to 8?
Agreed.
Thank you. And as usual, to confirm that items of business marked Part 1 will be considered in public and those marked Part 2 in private. Cabinet reports 5 to 8 are held in public and 9 to 13 are private items. First report tonight, agenda item 5, page 9 of the agenda. A review by the 17-18 External Services Scrutiny Committee on Community Sentencing. Councillor Mills.
Thank you, Leader. I move the recommendations 1 and 2 on page 9 of the report, and in a minute we'll be inviting Councillor Riley to come forward and to give his report of this working group. And then I will come back with your agreement to sum up where we are.
Thank you, Leader, and Councillor Mills. This report was one of several commissioned to a working group from the External Services Scrutiny Committee, as it then was, which allows the committee to fulfil its many statutory scrutiny functions and to scrutinise and review performance of external partners on behalf of residents. This method of work allows members to scrutinise issues and topics of great interest to this administration and to our residents as a whole. Under the chairmanship of Councillor Ian Edwards and his committee, Councillors Allen, Katara, Higgins, Dan and Palmer, selected by the committee, this working group scrutinised the current state of the effectiveness of community sentencing, a topic of considerable interest to residents and more widely to the criminal justice community. The working group sought to do as thorough a job as they could and as would be expected of them. However, they were to a substantial degree thwarted in that effort by the new system of contract letting to agencies who deliver projects that form part of options to sentencing tribunals. Formerly, the probation service were accountable to local authorities and thereby to residents for the work of these projects, engaging offenders and making reparation to the community that they had harmed. The overseeing organisations of community sentencing work now are CRCs, Community Rehabilitation Companies, who have contracted with the government to carry out important duties. Critically, in these new contracts, there is no obligation on the new contractor to be accountable to local authorities. The CRC serving this borough would not cooperate with the working group by coming to give evidence or give any form of update, or to that extent be scrutinised by members. And the working group would, Leader, have helped them and supported them, as we do with all agencies who appear before the committee. There are key themes in this report around accountability of these CRCs to our residents, concerns by other criminal justice partners around their performance and locally and nationally, cost and contract price set against performance and other issues. We have already to a degree escalated these messages to a wider audience and received very supportive national and senior level encouragement and help. These findings have been widely anticipated, and moving them to a national perspective, as the 5 recommendations do on page 16, is a great credit to the working group, the committee and to this administration. Leader, this Scrutiny Select Committee, by utilising the experience and talents of its members and officers, achieves significant results and makes this administration a leader in holding external partners to account for our residents. I would like to emphasise our thanks to the officers who worked as ever to an exceptional level in supporting the work of the group, in particular Liz Penny and Nikki O'Halloran. Thank you very much.
Thank Councillor Riley for his summary of what the main issue is that has arisen, and in particular how the link between the local community, local authority and the probation service, as it's now been reformed, has in effect been totally broken, and because of the way in which the setup has been established, making it very difficult to actually get any sort of formal consultation. It's something which we have experienced as part of the statutory Safer Hillingdon partnership as well, in terms of the lack of cooperation and understanding. And I think it is important that we try to re-establish that very vital local connection, because one of the great things about justice is justice being seen to be done in the local community, and that's one of the things that the previous probation service was able to demonstrate, and the local authority was able to highlight by working in partnership with it. So the two recommendations that I've moved on page 9 wrap up the work of the Working Party, which indeed was a good piece of investigation and analysis of where we are, and requests that those higher up the chain who have such influence do actually restore the issues of local links and the ability to scrutinise and the ability to be held to account at the local level. So I move.
Thank you, Councillor Mills. Councillor Riley, could you take our thanks back to the members of your committee and the working group, those members that weren't on your committee. Are those recommendations agreed? Thank you, agreed. Agenda item 6, Carer Strategy 2018-21, including the 17-18 progress update. Councillor Corton.
Thank you, Leader. I move the report and recommendations with the current progress update, as well as the recommendation that Hillingdon becomes a signatory of the Memorandum of Understanding. I should point out that there's Appendix C has been circulated separately, which Cabinet members have before them. The last 12 months, I think, have seen some significant progress on the delivery of carer support on several fronts. We've seen the establishment of the Carers Advisory Group. The Carers Forum itself has become, I think, more and more successful in reaching out to the hidden carers with ever greater attendances at meetings. I think also we've seen some very good progress in the delivery of carers assessments and the report requirements stemming from them. And we've seen fresh emphasis, or seeing fresh emphasis, on support to double carers. In other words, when there are two cared for within one family. And I must also acknowledge the leading role played by Hillingdon Carers as a key partner on all this and much else within the document. The Memorandum of Understanding, just briefly, I think really is a little more than formalising existing practice for Hillingdon. It is really aimed at health partners to ensure a consistency of approach for services received, complementing the wider work to integrate social care and health. So I move those recommendations, but not before thanking or recording my thanks to Councillor Hagar for her drive, determination and infectious energy to help improve support services to carers in Hillingdon. I move.
Thank you, Councillor Cawthorne. I think it's worth noting, and it's shown in paragraph 8, although the information is slightly out of date at 2011, 18% of unpaid carers were aged over 65, and equally importantly, approximately 10% were under 25. Those numbers have increased by now, so it covers the whole spectrum of age, this caring. So, are there any comments? If not, is the recommendation agreed? Thank you. Agenda item 7, page 77, the General Data Protection Regulation. Now, we've all been waiting for this one. The Queen signed it today, so it's now an act, not a bill. And we're all pleased to be able to clear down, as we hope, all that unwanted stuff we get on emails every morning from God knows who now. But this will be additional work and a cost for us as an organisation. It comes into force tomorrow. We have a very detailed report here with the 12 appendices. I think that there are a number of points in this, and I was just saying to Cabinet colleagues, I find it a little bit strange that at the moment, under the Data Protection Act that we've been working to, if people want access to information we're holding, we get 40 days to respond, and they pay a £10 fee for that. The timescale is now shortened to a month, and there's no fee. So that's on the basis that councils are so well off these days, and so full of employees that they've got time and resources to do this. And looking at paragraphs 21 and 22, these are the ones that cover the breaches, which are not insubstantial. If we fall foul of this, we have an obligation to notify the Information Commissioner's Office within 72 hours of any breach. Otherwise, there's a fine of up to 10 million euros, at the moment anyway. And secondly, the fine is up to 20 million euros if they determine that we have breached it. But I don't think we'll get anywhere near those sort of fines, but it just puts it in perspective of what this legislation could mean. Now, I think we do need to note our thanks to the Borough Solicitor in his capacity as a data protection officer. He's worked on this report. It's a very detailed set of policies and procedures to deal with this new legislation. I did read all of it, including the 12 appendices when I got it last week, and I think, based on what we know at this time, we have covered all the bases. There'll be some further work, detailed work, that we're going to have to do to cover specific things. Members would have received details today of the petitioning procedure, which on its own appears quite straightforward, but now we're told we have to redact the name of the lead petitioner. So we get a petition, we don't know technically who it's come from. That Mr. or Mrs. X can address us for 3 minutes. What do we call them then, Mr. or Mrs. X, or do we actually say at that time who they are? There's a lot that we need to work our way through, but for the moment I think we're in the best place we can be as far as this legislation is concerned. It does seem to have come thick and fast towards the end. As I say, it's now an act, and it's working as of tomorrow. So, without thanks to the Borough Solicitor, that we have a number of recommendations, 1 to 4, and those do delegate authority to the Borough Solicitor, myself and Cabinet Member for Finance and Property and Business Services, to make any slight changes that may have to be made. When this was drafted, it was still a bill and not an act, so we weren't quite sure what was going to emerge over the last week. Training has been happening thick and fast for staff. We need some more for council members. What council members are going to be has not yet been cleared, whether we're individual units, whether we're part of the overall council. Who knows? And finally, the recommendation 5 is that we request the Chairman of Executive Scrutiny to waive scrutiny call-ins on this. It has to be in place tonight because we've got to get it. We're under this jurisdiction tomorrow morning. So, are there any other comments on this? Anybody want to run through the appendices? If not, are the recommendations agreed? Thank you very much. Agenda item 8, appointment of council members to the London Housing Consortium. Councillor Cawthorne.
Palmer to the London Housing Consortium, which requires Cabinet approval. Having in the not too distant past established that this does in fact have a legal identity with joint committee status, I'm very happy to continue my long-standing tenure with this august body, working with Councillor Palmer moving forward. I so move.